Deep within the mines of Holmes Hill, Torinobu and Beaumont prepare themselves for the onslaught of demonic beasts and monsters from the void. The cacophonous roar of demonic beasts echoes through the caverns of the mines as the horrific void beasts approach. Torinobu and Beaumont make their way to a rickety wooden bridge, the only thing that stands between this horde of rampaging beasts and the exit to the mines and Brimstone County that lies beyond. Corralled by members of the Crimson Hand, a gigantic albino werewolf comes racing through the tunnels. Beaumont sees the creature emerging from the darkness and quickly runs to a better vantage point. He pulls out his shotgun and squeezes the trigger. The werewolf is blindsided by the shots, and its body is blasted apart in a hail of dark stone pellets. Torinobu runs to the edge of the bridge and readies his swords. "I will make my stand here, Beaumont-san. None shall pass." "Well, any of the buggers that try will be meeting the business end of my shotgun here." The two men barely have time to prepare themselves as a horde of gibbering stranglers come running through the tunnels towards them, followed by the gigantic, hulking form of a night terror. The Crimson Hand rush into the chamber from another opening. Dismayed at the sight of their pet werewolf already dispatched by Beaumont's shotgun, they raise their rifles and open fire, but in the dark gloom, the bullets sail over the heads of Beaumont and Torinobu. As the stranglers pile forward, crawling over each other to get to the bridge, Beaumont sees his chance and pulls a stick of dynamite from his satchel. With one hefty step forward, he hurls the stick of dynamite, and it lands in the midst of them, its fuse hissing until finally obliterating the gibbering little creatures into husks of charred flesh and bone. "Ha! How's that for a welcome, you horrible little blighters?" says Beaumont. As the thunderous roar of the explosion echoes through the mines, Torinobu sees the very human members of the Crimson Hand clutching their ears and reeling from the shock of the concussive blast. The samurai seizes the opportunity and charges across the bridge right into the midst of the black-clad cultists. His swords slash out in sudden fury. Eviscerating first one, then two, then three, and finally, his blade, weeping with blood, a lightning slice cuts down a fourth of the evil occultists. Swampy races across the bridge and joins Torinobu, launching itself at the final member of the Crimson Hand. But the quick-witted cultist sidesteps the dog's attack and rushes past both Swampy and Torinobu before turning on one heel as he reaches the bridge and firing his rifle. The shot punches Torinobu in the shoulder and sends him reeling, blood spilling onto the floor of the mines. "Oh, you will pay for that, you sneaky, treacherous dog," says Torinobu. Swampy looks up at his master, cocking his head inquisitively. "Not you, Swampy. You are a good dog," he says, reassuring the faithful hound. Meanwhile, the hulking form of the Night Terror charges across the wooden rickety bridge. Seeing Beaumont, the demonic beast makes to pass him, but Beaumont steps in its path. "Where do you think you're going?" he says, and is met with a blood-curdling roar from the creature as it swipes at him with its razor-sharp talons. But Beaumont is ready for the attack and manages to sidestep them as Torinobu prepares to face off against the final member of the Crimson Hand. He turns back towards the bridge, readying his sword, when suddenly he hears Swampy barking behind him. He turns back to look at the dog and sees, with horror, what Swampy is barking at. From deep within the mines emerges a gigantic, three-headed rattlesnake, mutated by darkstone, its rattler made of solid, purple, glowing darkstone. It hisses and rasps as its body recoils, preparing to strike. Torinobu glances over his shoulder, seeing the cultist off in the distance. "This is your lucky day. It seems I have bigger fish to fry," he says, readying himself to take on the gigantic darkstone hydra. "Stay back, Swampy. I will handle this creature." He draws his blades and meets the gaze of the 6 eyes staring back at him. On the other side of the bridge, Beaumont sidesteps the clumsy swipes of the Night Terror and draws his shotgun up to his shoulder. He doubles down, squeezing 2 triggers at once, and unloading a mass of darkstone buckshot directly into the creature's face. It howls in pain and collapses, dead. "Torinobu! Swampy! What's going on over there?" he calls, hearing the commotion further into the mines. But before he can do anything else, he sees the shadowy cultist skulking around near the bridge, and trusting Torinobu to handle himself, Beaumont has picked his next target. Meanwhile, in the mining room with the Darkstone Hydra, Torinobu rushes forward, his blades lashing out with agile fury that cut deep into the Darkstone Hydra, but the creature's thick serpentine scales block most of the damage, and with an angry hiss, the gigantic creature slithers forward, its enormous bulk batting Torinobu aside like a sack of straw. It moves with lightning speed. Swampy leaps aside just in time to avoid being crushed by its massive bulk. The Hydra races up to the bridge, and Beaumont, reloading his shotgun, sees the creature for the first time. "Mother of God, where did you come from?" he says. Fortunately, finding himself just out of reach of the giant snake's snapping jaws, Swampy, seeing his chance to help, chases after the black-robed cultist and jumps at him. Clamping his jaws down on the man's rifle and pulling it to one side, foiling the shot he was lining up against the gambler. Meanwhile, Torinobu picks himself up and prepares to return to the bridge and finish his business with the Darkstone Hydra. But before he can move, a trio of thick, writhing tentacle monstrosities burst up from the ground all around him and begin lashing out, keeping him back from the fight with the Hydra. Beaumont realizes he cannot let this foul creature make its way out of the mines and into the countryside. He opens fire on it, seeing the creature still alive, draws his holdout pistol and fires a shot in desperation. Torinobu, hearing the cacophony of the battle, attempts to make quick work of the tentacles, slashing at them with great fury. He cuts one down, but the writhing appendages prove more agile than he expected, and he fails to land the killing blow on either of the other 2. Meanwhile, Swampy attempts to bite down on the cultist once more, but the robed man manages to shove the dog away and flees, crossing the bridge and heading away from Beaumont after seeing what the gambling man did to the Darkstone Hydra. Meanwhile, Torinobu continues his fight with the writhing tentacles. But the slippery abominations continue to evade his strikes and swing at him clumsily. The battle-hardened warrior, however, manages to sidestep their attack. Back on the other side of the bridge, Beaumont watches the cultist fleeing away from him and attempting to escape the mines. Beaumont pulls his 6-shooter and steadily lines up a shot at the fleeing man. The gun's report echoes through the cavernous mines, and the last of the Order of the Crimson Hand slumps to the ground, dead. "I think that's the last of the buggers," he says to himself, unaware that Torinobu is still locked in combat. Torinobu, beginning to become angry that the agile tentacles continually evade his blades, instead raises his hand, putting his trust in the power of the magic ring he found after their return from Jargono. A blast of burning heat billows forth from the ring and immolates the 2 tentacles, leaving them blackened and charred on the ground like fried squid. The rampaging horde of demons and monsters seems finally to have come to an end, and Beaumont and Torinobu regroup by the bridge. "Ah, Torinobu, you're okay. I was starting to wonder if that giant bloody snake had done you in."
No, I will live to fight another day.
Well, so will we all by the looks of it. Thank the Lord above for that.
Yes, and the people of Brimstone County will be safe for another day.
Well, all except for poor Lucy Hancock, I suppose.
Yes, it is indeed tragic. We could not find the girl.
Well, I suppose we best send word to her father. The poor man's probably worried sick, and I doubt he'll be happy at the news, but it's better he knows than lives in fear of what might be.
Wise words, my friend. Now, let us leave this place.
Beaumont, Torinobu, and Swampy leave the mines, preparing themselves for a trek to the nearest town. Travel Journal of Beaumont Sinclair, July 1st, 1876. We set out from Holmes Hill, heading for Wilshin's Lodge. It's a long time since I've been there, it feels like, and I hope the townsfolk have forgotten about that shootout I had in the streets last time I was there. We don't know what's become of Lucy Hancock. It sounds like she may have been sacrificed to some demon or some other evil, but the kidnapper said she was with the Shadow King. He didn't say she was dead. So, although it's a long shot, we're holding out hope that we can track down this King of Shadows, or whatever he's calling himself. And with any luck, the girl might still be alive. As we travelled through a swampy patch of ground, in the distance we saw a group of floating lights. Many men have lost their lives to the deceptive guidance of such dancing lights in the sky. Knowing of the dangers, we decided to ride around them. Unfortunately, that brought us into the path of a swarm of bog bats native to that horrible place Jargono. They suddenly caught sight of us and swooped down to attack. Fortunately, a few shots from my revolver sent them fleeing, and shortly after, we arrived at Wilshin's Lodge. We restocked our supplies, and of course, I stocked up on dynamite. I feel I can never have too much of the stuff these days. Torinobu continued to ask around about the man in black, hoping we could track him down once again, and we both kept our ears to the ground for rumours of the Shadow King. Perhaps I should get some sleep, but I feel I'd be better served going to the saloon and seeing if I can find out anything about the Shadow King. Beaumont enters the saloon and takes a seat at the bar, ordering himself a shot of whiskey. He asks the bartender about the Shadow King, but the bartender seems to have no idea what he's talking about. And then he hears the voice of a young woman.
Well, howdy there, Bristol.
Hello, fair lady.
I couldn't help but hear you mention this Shadow King.
Yes, I'm trying to track down a young lady who's been kidnapped, and the Shadow King seems to be the one responsible.
Well, you know, I heard the Shadow King is worshipped by some evil cult down in Scroggs Bog. If I were you, that's where I'd start looking.
Really? Thank you, young lady. You've been most helpful. Allow me to buy you a drink.
Oh, no, I couldn't possibly accept a drink. I just saw you looked like the kind of man who was doing righteous work, so I figured I'd lend a hand. I'm happy to help.
Well, I'm most grateful for your help. Have a good night.
You too, sir, and don't forget, Scroggs Bog, that's where you want to be heading.
Beaumont finishes his drink and leaves the saloon, surprised at how quickly they have managed to track down a lead on the Shadow King. He heads to the campsite and turns in for the night. Travel Journal of Beaumont Sinclair, July 2nd to July 5th, 1876. Our best lead is Scroggs Bog. Knowing the next step of our journey will take us to Scroggs Bog, we set out in the morning with haste. Along the way, we crossed an old wooden bridge that arches across the rushing Cohen River. At the top of the bridge, we listened to the sound of the river, and we could feel the cool mist rising from the water. I thought perhaps Lady Luck might smile on me, and so I decided to toss a coin and make a wish. I flipped the coin into the river, and it hit the water with a satisfying plop. Well, my wish didn't come true, but as I was leaving the bridge, I noticed something shiny in the grass, and it was a gemstone, wouldn't you know? It should sell for a pretty penny at the next town we reach. That fight back at Holmes Hill, that shadowy demon, whatever it was, I just can't stop thinking about it. The thought of its whispering voice and its horrible powers. It's near enough to drive me to madness. But there's nothing else for it. We have to press on. That night, while I was sleeping, I had a strange nightmare, or perhaps a dream, I'm not sure. I woke in a cold sweat. with vague memories of the dream. A young girl staring up at the moon in the middle of a swamp. It's strange. I almost felt as if I know that swamp, and something tells me the girl was Lucy Hancock, or some strange apparition of her at least. But when the moon she was staring at began to glow red, well, I fear it could be a bad omen. The next day brought more rain and mud, and our travels were hampered once more. But it was a calm night at least, and the rain stopped. The next day we finally made it into the swampland around Scroggs Bog, and I had some awful reminders of that dream I had the other night. Scroggs Bog was an unnatural and strange sight amidst the arid desert landscape. This foul-smelling swamp is fed by the Cohen River, as well as some kind of unnatural evil that seems to prefer the marshes rather than desert sand. At the swamp's edge, a gnarled tree as tall as a small mountain reached into the clouds, huge jungle-like vines draping off its branches. As we navigated the swamps, the mist around us got thicker and thicker. Eventually, the fog was so thick we couldn't see more than a few inches away from our faces, and so we had no choice but to set up camp for the night. As Beaumont and Torinobu set up their camp, they stare into the thick fog. The Scroggs Bog mine can't be far away. I think we should find it tomorrow without any issues.
Yes, Beaumont-san. Tomorrow we will continue our search for Lucy Hancock.
You know, Torinobu, I had a strange dream the other night, and it might sound like I'm losing my faculties, but I'm sure the young lady in it, something tells me it was Lucy Hancock, perhaps trying to warn us or something.
You also had a dream?
Yes.
I too dreamt of a young lady. She was staring at the moon, but the moon turned crimson, and I found myself waking in a cold sweat.
Well, I say, that's a turn up for the books. It's the exact same dream I had, Torinobu.
This must be a sign that we are on the right track. We should sleep, rest well. Who knows what tomorrow may bring.
And so Beaumont and Torinobu turn in for the night, but as they sleep, there is the rustling and cracking of twigs from within the foliage of Scroggs Bog. Swampy, their ever-vigilant companion, smells nothing and hears nothing as he sleeps by the fire, his senses dulled by the suffocating mist surrounding them.